Good morning. Welcome to the Head in the Cloud, Feet on the Ground session. My name is Brian Wiens. I'm the Senior Product Manager at InterTalk. I'm really glad you could join us today. LMR, radio dispatch, it's traditionally been architected on-prem, with the radios on premises at the agency's location, where their dispatch center or their PSAP is. Today, what we're going to talk about, radio dispatch being networked differently, using cellular networks, using the cloud, with the end scenario of not just having a single location, and not just having audio only for dispatchers, enabling them to have a fuller world of communication. So if you're a public safety agency and you use radios to communicate, and you're wondering about what's coming next, what's changing in the industry, you're in the right place. So utilizing new networking approaches and architectures, it's going to grow in popularity as critical communications broadband increases and adoption grows. Agencies that want to use LMR with public broadband for maximum coverage and better than voice services. That's what we're anticipating we're gonna see. And the dispatch center of the future, it's not just gonna be radio. It's not just gonna be a single location. It's gonna be a much more flexible type of an environment. As a more detailed introduction, my name is Brian Wiens. I come from a background. I've worked in telecommunications and also from a software perspective, worked with software companies. Education, I come from a business background. I've got a Bachelor of Commerce and a Master's of Business, but as well I've done studies in computer science through Harvard and usability through University of Michigan. For the last 3 years, I've been working with, 3.5 years, been working with a company called InterTalk. There's a couple of my colleagues here with us today. InterTalk's based out of Halifax, Nova Scotia, so way out there on the East Coast. And it's a company that's been around celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. You may have heard of InterTalk, you may not. As I sometimes say, much like one of the big beer slogans in Halifax, those who like us a lot. InterTalk has grown through the years with customers like California Highway Patrol, California Fire, and even Boston EMS and Metro Rail, kind of spanning Canada, the United States, and in multiple verticals, largely focused on public safety and the critical communications community. As I was pulling together this talk and this perspective, much like we do with our projects and our solutions, and as we're building on our products, I work closely with the team. So work closely with our engineers to make sure that what I was saying was a good representation of what the company believes and our perspective on where the market is going. So I do want to start though with a joke, if I can. Is it okay if I start with a joke? Why did the product manager cross the road? To get to the other slide. I know, it's terrible, it's terrible. I don't know who writes this stuff. I wrote it, sorry. So this is not intended to be a sales presentation. I'm not here to sell you on the cloud. What I want to do is talk about the decisions that are in front of you, talk about the technologies and the changes that we're seeing in the industry, and I want to educate on that choice and all the factors that go into the choice. Again, it's not intended to be a sales presentation. I will talk about InterTalk's solutions, of course. As a product manager, what I know best are our own products. And so that's naturally, as we're talking about where things are going, naturally we believe that what we're doing is a great fit to what our agencies need, what our customers need. So you will see that reflected, but the intent here is to educate. Now, I do want to welcome Paul Bremner to to the session, and I'm quoting you here, so I hope that's okay, Paul. We did talk about it a little bit. Paul is from Omdia Research, and Paul leads a podcast called the CritCom Circle, which I really enjoy. We're talking about the cloud, and we're talking about whether people would need to change or how people might adopt it. And so, one of the questions is, why would you consider the cloud? Why would some of these changes that we're seeing in the industry, why would you potentially evaluate those? You have a lot of decisions on your plate. You're busy. And so, as Paul highlighted from his research, in this year, in 2022, 50% of PSAPs in America who change architecture will migrate to the cloud. And so as I thought about that, and I thought about the specific numbers, we know that there's 5,748 PSAPs in the US. And so PSAPs change architectures, change systems at different rates. But say, for example, if you take a number of 10%, say 10% of them are changing. That's based on the idea that, hey, some of them will change sooner, some of them hold on to their equipment for 20 years. But say, for example, if 10% of them are considering making that change, what we're looking at would be 575 agencies that would be making a significant change. And if half of those would be adopting the cloud, then we'd be just under 300 agencies adopting the cloud. That, to me, is a scenario where it makes sense to dig in and understand why, to understand what's happening, to understand what's changing. Ken Ray-Ban, who I was just chatting with outside of the session here, he's an analyst who appeared on one of the podcasts as well. He referred to 2021 as the year that the cloud got unshackled in public safety. It was a year that cloud adoption really increased. And one of the ideas behind that we'll talk about in a minute is the cloud providers have really chosen to invest heavily in the public safety and the critical communications space. And that's that investment is driving a significant amount of the adoption. One of the other concepts that I really want to talk about is Metcalfe's Law. So coming from a software perspective, Metcalfe's Law says that as a network grows, the value that the people in the network gain from it grows exponentially as the network grows. So the idea would be like moving to a city. If you move to a city, the more people that are there, the more services pop up, the more value you can get from being in the city. Or say, for example, the internet itself. Back when it was a handful of educational institutions who were just trading text emails back and forth, there wasn't a whole lot of value there. But as the internet grew and as more people adopted it, more people found different ways to use it and gain value from it. Therefore, of course, it became more valuable to more people. Those are examples of Metcalfe's Law. The more people that are on a network, the more valuable it will be, the more value they'll be able to derive from it. When I talk about the cloud, just to keep it really simple, the cloud is just somebody else's computers. There's lots of networking that goes into how you connect with the cloud, but really and truly, it's someone else's computers, someone else's servers. The cloud, as we talk about it, as we define it, brings different capabilities, different flexibility, and we'll get into the specifics of that. But just keep that in mind. We're just talking about utilizing somebody else's computers here. Now, we've talked a little bit about cloud growth and cloud adoption, but in public safety, we're talking about lives on the line. We're talking about life and death type of situations. And so for some folks, that makes them hesitant to change. If it ain't broke, don't break it. But for other folks, the idea that it is life and death, it pushes them to explore new solutions. It pushes them to explore what the best possible solutions for their agencies might be. Very much the choice comes down to whether you're doing it all yourself or whether there are elements of your operations that you're okay with, that you're comfortable with delegating. So let's explore that decision. Let's explore what that trade-off looks like. When we talk about the cloud, generally there are the big three. So you've got AWS, you've got Azure, and you've got Google, and you've got others as well. When you're talking about those are the big three, but as well there's different networks, different network data centers. And so when we talk about the cloud, oftentimes, and through this, oftentimes we're talking specifically about these three, but just keep in mind, a cloud, when we say cloud, I don't mean to use it as just a big umbrella. It can also be data centers that are connected by other providers. And when we talk about public safety cloud, generally we're referring to AWS's GovCloud or Azure's government cloud. Those are our cloud implementations that have stricter controls. They're geared specifically for government, public safety, government type of clients. So there's a stricter type of controls, stricter rules in place for how things are hosted. So when we're talking about the cloud, I mentioned the idea that there has to be a good reason to consider changing. Why even talk about it? If things are working well enough, why would you ever want to change? Well, the first thing to consider is the idea of an evergreen solution. So what this idea is that it being someone else's servers, it's on them to maintain them. It's on them to get the equipment, to maintain the equipment, and to make sure the equipment is secure and reliable and kept in good working order. An evergreen solution means instead of you having to do that, instead of you having to maintain your own equipment, you offload that to them. You offload that to your service provider or the cloud provider. Next, I want to talk about reliability. Sometimes when people talk about the cloud or different networking type solutions, the idea is that it's not reliable. And I take issue with that as we look at different geographical zones. When we looked at availability zones, we look at how different cloud providers have set up their solutions with all kinds of different ways that you can go about networking and architecting your solution. The idea that a single point, a single place, a single site equipment setup would be more reliable than a cloud-based one is one that I think needs to be challenged as we look at the decision. The idea that a single location where that creates a potential single point of failure. The idea that would be more reliable than a cloud type of an implementation is one that I would suggest pushes aside the inherent risk of being at a single location or having a single point of failure. And finally, I want to talk about integration. Being in the cloud enables for a more integrated scenario. So you have multiple different providers who are providing different types of solutions that say your dispatchers or your agents might need. And so the idea there of integration means that other providers who are also hosting in a similar type of a situation, their data, their application can be integrated together more easily. It makes for a more holistic, a more full ecosystem. Idea here is that utilizing a service provider who's best in the world means that you don't have to be best in the world for those things. You don't have to be best in the world for hosting and purchasing and hosting the equipment that you're using. So considerations that I would challenge you to keep in mind as you're making the decisions on, how are you going to go about how are you going to go about making the decisions on your architecture and your networking and what type of solutions you want to utilize? First one is, how old are your computers and how old is your software? How close is your dispatch system to end of life? If you have your own gear and it's moving towards end of life, that forces decisions. What data sources do your dispatchers and your agents have available for them within their workflow? We talked about integration. So what do they have available? What do they need? If your dispatch center became unavailable, what's your continuity plan? What's your operational continuity scenario behind your dispatch center? How do you defray that risk? And from a financial perspective, what is maintaining, supporting, sourcing, and upgrading? What's the real cost to all that? What's the cost of the labor? What's the cost of the equipment? What costs are you really looking at there? A key question to ask as critical communication and public safety industry is, what can critical communications learn from the private sector? What learnings has the private sector realized that public safety can learn from? Now, looking at a cross-section of organizations that have adopted the cloud, just want to highlight a few to highlight what's happening today. Idea being, is anyone adopting the cloud? Is this a solution that is gaining traction? So I highlight a few here that you can see. First one I want to mention is the Chincoteague Police Department. So InterTalk provides Chincoteague their radio dispatch console solution, and it's cloud-based. I was able to speak about that at the IWCE in last year in September. So they're able to utilize the cloud to take away the risks of kind of having that single location for their equipment and their dispatch center. It frees their dispatchers in the case where they might have weather events that might disrupt them, might force them to evacuate their center. It enables them to keep dispatching no matter what's happening specifically with the weather. Some other ones that I want to highlight, you see there the California Office of Emergency Services. They're utilizing location information that is cloud enabled. You see the city of Allen, Texas. They've got what they call a hyper-converged architecture. And so that's a scenario where they're bringing agencies from throughout the city onto a common platform so they're able to interact together in a seamless fashion. And finally, you see there the Calgary Police Service. I mentioned we're from Canada, so I have to shout out to a Canadian agency. They're utilizing video conferencing via the cloud as part of their operations. Now, I know by talking about some specific agents, vendors that are utilizing the cloud, I'm sure there's going to get some nasty emails later on. But these are just a cross section of companies that no doubt you've heard of that utilize the cloud. And what I want to highlight here is that when we're talking about cloud and talking about this kind of a networked approach, you see next generation 911 providers, you see CAD providers, you see logging recorders, and you see radio dispatch providers in amongst those companies. Now, in talking with agencies and customers about cloud approaches, there's one question that always gets asked. I've never actually talked to any agency about cloud and not have them ask the question, what happens when the internet goes down? Now, I did technical support a long time ago actually, years ago for the telco, and I got a call from a customer one day, and they said, did the internet go down? And I was like, well, I don't think the internet went down. Potentially you're not connected, and I'm sure it was just a matter they had to reboot their computer. But the idea there, yeah, the internet didn't go down. It was their connection that went down. And so certainly the idea that an agency who had a single source of internet connectivity and was utilizing the internet to stay connected to a cloud implementation, it's inevitable that at some point that connectivity is going to go down. A backhoe is going to cut through a cable, or a cellular system is going to go down because of weather events. At some point, a single source of internet will go down. And so the first response, the first idea that we look at when we're talking about that last mile issue for internet connectivity or general connectivity for an agency is the idea of having multiple sources of the backhaul. And so that can be having kind of multiple wired cables going into to a dispatch center, or utilizing wireless, public safety broadband network kind of a scenario, or it can even be using non-terrestrial networks. So your satellite type of services. Usually those are more for a backup kind of a situation. And EZNet is something that I know a number of states are looking at as a way of increasing reliability and removing some of the risks that come with an open internet type of connectivity for their traffic. AWS, in talking with those guys, they have direct fiber into some urban area dispatch centers. So that's one way that they mitigate that risk, is just by putting in direct internet connections. And as well, I was talking with Kirk Lonbon from Azure, and he was telling me about Azure's orbital system, where they have a low latency satellite connectivity to Azure. So the idea there, and I mentioned the Metcalfe's law, the idea that as more and more people are adopting, and as more and more, as the cloud providers are looking for ways to invest to make their solutions public safety grade, you're seeing new ways of approaching the problem, new ways of mitigating those risks. Now, the other question that always comes up, and I know it's a big topic here at IWC, is the idea of security. And one of the things that I challenge when it comes to security is that in talking with agencies and talking with lots of agencies that are, say, smaller and spread throughout the country, much of the approach in previous years to security was kind of a big tower type of an approach. If we have a big enough wall, if we're a big enough tower, if we limit the connections, that's our way of securing our system. And as we know, with the more modern security type of approaches that come out, like the zero trust approach and everything else, assuming that nobody is going to penetrate your network is not a good assumption in our day and age. A much better approach is to use tokens, to partition networks, to make sure that the entire system is sophisticated, that the security is there. And so the idea that a cloud implementation, cloud providers who invest millions into cybersecurity are less secure than an equipment-based solution that is back office, that potentially has older software, older operating systems, is one that I think we need to challenge. It's a great question. There's a whole lot of investment and development that needs to happen, but the idea of that secure tower is no longer a suitable approach for security in our day. Now, I've talked a lot about the cloud, and so the talk today, what we're talking about is head in the cloud, feet on the ground. So I want to represent when folks don't want to go to the cloud. When we talk to people about the cloud, and agencies that want to stay, they want to stay on premises. What are the ideas there? What are the things that are driving them? A couple of the things that are key in talking with any agencies that are of that mindset. Generally, they're considering cloud. Generally, they're considering what's going to happen with 5G. Generally, they're considering mission-critical push-to-talk, but they're just not ready to make a change yet. There's not enough of a driver to push them in that direction. Generally, the idea is, hey, we're going to stick with what's worked. It's worked for many, many years. We're going to stick with it. I don't see an overall closeness to some of the new developments that we're seeing, but just more of a not now kind of a situation. And the other piece that I hear a lot is the idea of agencies' procurement processes being capital-based. They're just not set up to purchase on a service, on an operational type of a model. I'm going to be part of a panel on Thursday that is talking Thursday afternoon that's talking specifically about that and specifically around some of the benefits that a service, software as a service model brings to public safety. But certainly there are agencies that say would get their accounting software and get other services as operational models, but for their more large scale type of purchases, they're still more in the capital mindset. So really, the decision comes down to dedicated IT and radio department, dedicated equipment, generally on-prem, or moving to the hosted model, moving to a cloud-based or a multiple networked kind of an approach, or potentially a hybrid, kind of taking best of both worlds. So InterTalk, I mentioned we were going to talk a little about InterTalk's products and services and how we approach this problem. And so the product that I want to highlight here is our Nlight product. Nlight works to be the bridge between technologies, enabling LMR, enabling radio, but also bringing in the best of broadband solutions and push-to-talk types of solutions. It is cloud native. It's enabled to be either in the cloud, on-prem, or a hybrid, a mix of both. And it can be for customers. It can be the LMR voice bridge for an EZNet or push-to-talk. Public safety broadband network, LMR, public cloud. It can bring all those together. It enables the customer to make those decisions. Now, when I'm talking to agencies and talking about what are the values that the product brings to the table, very much those align with the ones that I mentioned earlier around the values that being a cloud solution brings. But I do want to highlight that bringing together LMR and LTE enables for agencies to have their LMR networks, but also bring the best of the broadband world to the dispatcher. Put all those network options in front of the dispatcher, so the dispatcher's not just limited to voice, but has kind of the full world, the full range of options in front of them. As well, it is a platform agnostic solution. And this fits very much with where InterTalk has come from throughout the company's history. We don't pick one type of technology or one solution. And so with the Nlight product, we work with AWS, we work with Azure, we work with on-premises implementations, and we work with all the various LMR type of solutions. So that's analog or DMR, P25. We are agnostic. We work well. We like to work with everyone. And the idea here is that by being browser-based, it enables connection from anywhere. So that enables a dispatcher to, say for example, in the scenario where they might have to evacuate their dispatch center or might need to work from home, they're able to do that. And if a dispatch supervisor wanted to monitor a situation, say from home or from a location that's very separate, they wouldn't be able to with their LMR system. They're able to do that because of the networked approach to the product. Now you see the interface here. What I want to highlight here is the flexibility of what the dispatcher might have in front of them. If you want to see a demo of the product in action, certainly welcome you to come by InterTalk's booth. I'll be there, the whole team would be there. Booth number is 1861. Definitely invite everyone to come by. But I want to talk about the paradox, talk for a minute about the paradox of dispatch. So dispatchers, what you see is on the screen is a whole lot of different data feeds and even connected networks. But the idea there is dispatchers want to have all of the information that's available. They want to have best-in-class information. They want to know where if there are shots, where the shots came from. They want to know if the public is talking about a situation, what are they saying, what's happening. They want to have phones, they want to have radio connections, they want to have maps, they want to have video of the situation. All those things are examples of information that the dispatchers can use to better serve their public safety first responders. But the paradox is, if you overwhelm people with too much information, too many different kinds of information, it slows down their response. They have too many things to think about, too many things on their plate. It slows down their response. So how we've done it, and in a demo I can certainly show, but you see on the screen, you see different tabs at the top. The platform, the product is created so that the dispatcher only has in front of them what they or their supervisor wants them to be focused on, just the tools that they need at the time. And they're able to have other tools on different tabs that they can go to as they need them. So you could have pre-configured mission with a specific map and specific radios for an area of the city that has a high rate of incidents. And so that way, you have a dispatcher who's focused just on incident in that area. They can pull up that mission. It's already pre-configured for them. And it simplifies things. It puts the right tools in their hand and puts aside the tools that they don't need until they need to switch to another focus. So that's our way of handling that challenge that every PSAP that I talk to is facing. Lots of great information, but an overwhelming amount of information, amount of information that paralyzes or slows down response. Now, looking at what's coming up in the next year with the product, when we're talking about LMR, the two questions that get asked the most in the world of LMR is, where are you? And so, the enhanced mapping is something that we're soon going to be releasing, and that just enables the dispatcher to better see where the call is coming from, where their agents are, and that can be where it's enabled from the radio, or even through, say, an ES chat integration, where their ES chat users are. Those are all mapped out for them. So the dispatcher would know where the caller, where the radio call is coming from. And then the other question that always comes up in the world of LMR is, can you repeat that? Can you repeat that? Can you repeat that, please? And so we've had the instant recall recorder built in as part of the product since inception, but we're going to be releasing a cloud-based IRR enhancement to the product. And so that's no replacement for a logging recorder. Logging recorders are obviously still critical for public safety agencies for chain of evidence, but for a dispatch or a dispatch supervisor who wants right kind of in real time to be able to just click and hear any and all of the calls that have happened that they might have missed, to be able to do that right in the interface enables one of the challenges that we've seen in the LMR world for years. When we look at the architecture and kind of getting to that point of, hey, what does LMR look like in a cloud type of a scenario? You see right at the top the dispatch console system and the radio site. You see the top right-hand corner there. You see your radio towers. You see your base station, your donor radio, and your gateway device. So that's your radio site. That's your traditional radio site. Your donor radio, connected by gateway to your LAN or your WAN. Now, right below that, you see the cloud cluster. And so, what we mean by that is the authentication services, voice over IP, or like push talk over cellular, mission critical, push to talk, all of those functions that can be cloud enabled or can be on-prem. That's all that function within the architecture. And then finally, you see the dispatcher right at the bottom, and that's the browser-based approach. That's the component of the architecture that enables dispatchers and supervisors to connect via a browser. So on whatever device they're using, but via the browser enables them to connect and utilize the system from wherever they might be. the slide you see here is InterTalk's gateway product. What this is really our head in the cloud, feet on the ground enabler. So you see there the Ethernet port. So your radios are plugged into this device. So the Ethernet port enables those radios as the audio is translated to digital, enables that to go to your LAN, to your WAN, to whatever networked approach you're using, and potentially even to the cloud. And you see the USB 1, and the port, USB 2 and the port. That's where you plug in your radios. That's where that analog audio gets digitized. That's what enables the feet on the ground, the LMR, the radios that agents have in their hand. That's what enables that all to feed right into your system. That's what enables dispatchers to interact with that from wherever they are. Now, one of the things that's driving change in the industry, of course, is broadband network adoption. And so one of the ways that looks is push talk over cellular. And that can look like ESChat, Kodiak, Team Connect. That can be on-prem, that can be cloud. Generally, the cloud approach is a streamlined approach. It's a lighter type of approach. In public safety, and there are whole sessions that are dedicated to this, but in public safety, generally what we're seeing with that is more of a supplement, an augment to an LMR type of a scenario as opposed to a replacement. Now, we have an integration. The one push talk over cellular application that we've created an integration with is ESChat. And so you can see this at either of our booths here at IWCE. But what this does, it enables two-way communication between the device and the dispatch console. That can be to groups. It can be one-to-one calling. One of the applications that I love is the ability for the dispatcher to send text messages back and forth with ESChat users. And that even includes being able to send images. So you can imagine a scenario where a dispatcher sees on Twitter, they see a picture of what might be an active shooter situation, a potential suspect. They see that, they're able to send that picture on to those users who would be on site. They would be able to see, as opposed to hearing an audio, hey, this guy might be 6 feet tall and have a red hat. Instead of that, they'd be able to see a picture and be able to then look for that person. Or an agent on site might be able to take a picture, fire that off to the dispatcher. The dispatcher is able to then see that and get that out to the other groups, other agents who are on site. Opens up a whole world of communication, enhanced communication, I should say. Then, when we look at mission-critical push-to-talk, mission-critical MCX, the first thing to note is that, yeah, LMR is not going away. The idea that a broadband solution is taken over in the world of public safety for LMR just isn't supported. What we're seeing is that LMR is continuing to grow at a rate of 6.2%, but important to know, it's actually still growing on all continents. So LMR is not going away, but what we're seeing is the enhancement and kind of augmentation of that communication. This carrier integrated approach, it's from an MCX perspective, from an MCPT perspective, it does bring specific advantages. The idea is by being standards-based, it removes kind of a siloing of the communication of the approaches. The standards-based approach makes sure that agencies are able to work with the vendor and have the vendor of choice and have best-in-class options at their disposal. When we look at these broadband solutions, one of the things that I think is that we're going to see these get adopted more quickly in the larger mission-critical space even before we see that adoption in public safety. For public safety, as I mentioned, it really is an augmentation. But when you start talking about aviation, when you talk about rail and transportation, because of the cost advantages that the broadband networks bring, I think we're going to see that adoption in the mission critical, the larger mission critical world, even before we see kind of a holistic changeover in public safety. If you have an opportunity, there was a great session yesterday that I was able to sit in on. It was called Not Just LMR Anymore, and they did a really good job of getting in deep on push-to-talk over cellular, MCX, even the cloud. So if you have a chance, it would be on the IWCE app. Definitely, there's some really good insights there. So just to bring this to a conclusion, a couple of key points that I want to highlight. First is LMR, push-talk over cellular, and MCX. They're going to exist in overlapping status. One's not going away. One's not going to take over from the other any time in the near future. But agencies need to bridge from their existing equipment to the future, whatever that future is. As with anything in product management, oftentimes the answer comes down to it depends. And so for agencies, what agencies need to do is make a plan. Understand what your risk assessment is, what your objectives are, and make a plan. All the indications, and you've seen the data here today, all the indications is that cloud and broadband is gonna enable a more robust, a more efficient critical communication system as it evolves. But when and how that happens, that really comes down to the whole point, the whole idea behind the head in the cloud and the feet on the ground. Again, we're at booth 1861. Love to chat with you there, love to show you a demo, and I'm open for questions down here as we wrap up. Thanks very much for your time.